So before I get into it properly, thank you so much for clicking on my video. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. Enjoy, and I'll catch you at the end. We've all seen the coverage and reviews. Redfall has been an unmitigated disaster for both Arcane and Xbox. With middling to poor scores, a disastrous 56 on Metacritic, and an even more dismal 3.4 user score, it's clear that Redfall has failed to be the rousing start to Microsoft's AAA launch calendar. Redfall launched in such a sorry state that it's shaken belief, not only in Arcane's ability to make a good immersive sim, but in Microsoft's ability to manage its legion of studios. This incredibly damaging fallout onto Microsoft and Bethesda's reputation should hardly be surprising, however. If we look at Redfall's core game design, it's clear to see that Redfall embodies everything that Arcane isn't: shallow, uncomplicated, trend-chasing, and unoriginal. Look at Arcane's last game, Deathloop. While Deathloop arguably wasn't quite as accomplished in its time style as Arcane's previous efforts in Prey Mooncrash, it was a massive success, with Game of the Year nominations and high reviews all around. Deathloop was creative, different, and held a unique enough position in a crowded gaming market to stand out from the crowd. What was that crowded gaming market made up of? Games exactly like Redfall, trend chasing, filled with unnecessary and unimpactful loot systems, bugged and broken, and completely devoid of the spark and ingenuity that defined earlier Arcane games. So, starting from the start, where did these industry trends come from, and why have they led to broken, unimaginative messes like Redfall? Let's track these trends from the moment they started, to where they began to take hold, to the absolute disgrace of a game that became Redfall. It all begins, somewhat unexpectedly, with Destiny. Not all industry trends start off in a negative place. In fact, most don't. Want to see where the trend of having an almost totally unneeded loot system in every game with an open world started off? Welcome to Destiny. Ex-Halo developer Bungie's looter shooter Behemoth wasn't the first of its kind, but it definitely refined a lot of the genre's quirks. Destiny welcomed new players. Well, in the days that actually used to welcome new players. The Destiny New Light experience has literally never been worse, and it's incredibly depressing. But anyway, Destiny used to welcome new players with an excellent combat model, with varied, interesting enemies, and a world filled with lore. You might have to dig deep into the Grimoire cards to find the lore, but it was certainly there for those who wanted it. Destiny's endgame content was what really reeled in the line for those that were looking for a new looter shooter experience. It could be argued that the endgame of games such as Destiny was what triggered the enormous industry shift towards longer games with deeper progression and complex loot systems. You see, developers saw the massive gameplay hours that games such as Destiny, The Division, and Borderlands had, and money symbols appeared in their eyes. The longer players spend playing a game and devoting all their gameplay time into it, the more money they'll be willing to spend in order to improve that experience themselves. That's why we ended up with games like Far Cry New Dawn having loot systems when they really didn't need to have them. That game had monetized legendary weapons that could be bought to make the game easier and skip past a significant amount of progression. For another example, we'll be looking at the king of out-of-place progression systems, Ghost Recon Breakpoints. First, however, let's take a quick look at how monetization took hold in an industry that used to be about player satisfaction first and profit second. This topic doesn't actually begin exactly where you'd expect. It starts with a totally free-to-play title that includes zero pay-to-win elements and zero entry fee. It's a little title that some of you might have heard of. Let's talk about Fortnite. Most of you probably thought that this section would be about EA's FIFA series and its predatory Ultimate Team mode with its loot boxes and its FIFA points. Well, the answer for where all our modern microtransactions trends originate is actually nothing to do with loot boxes. It's been a long time since we had the infamous Battlefront 2 loot box scandal that led to many countries banning loot boxes, or at least heavily regulating them. These regulations, along with player outcry, has led to loot boxes being almost obsolete in major AAA games today. It's the system that replaced them that we'll be looking at. We've all heard about the Fortnite Battle Pass. V-Bucks and emotes have been the cause for many memes since 2017, and that's entirely by design. The design team at Epic Games have a total hold over their players, as their catchy dancers capitalise on any and all TikTok trends that emerge, and run repeated events around popular IP such as Star Wars, Marvel and DC. Look at Chapter 1 Season 10, which included a rebranding of the iconic Tilted Towers as Gotham City, or Chapter 2 Season 4, which saw a season devoted entirely to Marvel characters, along with a seasonal battle pass brimming with Marvel content for fans to enjoy and collect. Even recently, the Star Wars event that's been running over the last few weeks had its very own battle pass, along with the usual seasonal one, which is the first time Epic has done that and signifies that they know exactly how many people will tune in to Fortnite just for that one event. The point is, Epic has learned that by establishing the Battle Pass model and placing desirable items at the end of those Battle Passes, people will play more and more just to collect those items. Other games have embraced this approach to varying degrees of success. Call of Duty is one of those games with multiple seasons of Battle Pass content on top of a cash shop brimming with colourful and unnecessary skins, as well as a yearly full price release model. It's led to Call of Duty being the most heavily monetized major franchise that we see today, on top of even maybe FIFA, or EA Sports FC as it's now called. One thing that Call of Duty has also become, in its haste to become profitable, is buggy, lacking in features, and reliant on limited time modes in order to keep players interested. It's this FOMO, or fear of missing out, that I think the Battle Pass system of Fortnite have brought most of the games industry. Limited time events are nothing new to gaming, but Fortnite's massive earnings and Battle Pass system have popularised and romanticised those events to the point of saturation. Games have become more reluctant to offer players anything meaningful at launch, because of their hesitation to provide good content for the sake of good content instead of monetization. This has led to rushed game releases, as developers have felt comfortable in releasing the game's bare bones, and therefore filled with bugs and game-breaking issues. This is the final factor that would eventually lead to Redfall, and there are two prime examples of this sense of unfinishedness beginning to take effect in AAA games, albeit for very different reasons: Fallout 76 and Cyberpunk 2077. Let's take a look, shall we? We always start with the world. That was what Bethesda lead Todd Howard said first when he reached the stage for Fallout 76's first announcement. It's difficult to imagine how he could have been more wrong. Fallout 76 was said to be bringing new graphics and lighting systems to the forefront of its presentation, to create a landmark of next-generational power. The reality was that Fallout 76 looked like a slightly upscaled Xbox 360 game, and that's very emphasised slightly. 76's dull and drab world was filled not only with underwhelming graphics and janky shooting mechanics, but by hosts of game-breaking bugs. Whole careers on YouTube have been made through compilations of glitches that were found in Fallout 76. Along with this, the game utilised a pre-order system that allowed players access to betas, albeit betas that were hosted at entirely inconvenient times, and this was only the first of how Fallout 76 would take advantage of willing players' wallets. Dodgy subscription models and time-saving microtransactions aside, Fallout 76 was fundamentally damaged from launch, and it's only now, years after launch, that it's reached an acceptable launch standard. It's not the worst offender in its category, however. That award goes to the most ridiculously overhyped, overreaching, and ultimately undelivering game ever released: Cyberpunk 2077.
Yesterday's body count lottery rounded out to a solid and sturdy 30. 10 out of 8.
The road to Cyberpunk 2077's launch was, To put it mildly, a rocky one. Originally announced in 2012, fans were sold on a futuristic vision that gave promises of self-augmentation and huge customizability. In the 2013 trailer, this was reiterated upon, and imaginations went wild. A huge world, unlimited possibilities, and a game the likes of which we had never seen before. Unfortunately, it just wasn't meant to be. After 5 years of rumours and whisperings about an uneven development cycle, we finally saw Cyberpunk again at E3 2018. Nothing more was said about a concrete release date until E3 2019, but we heard that Cyberpunk 2077 was finally due a release on the 16th of April 2020. 3 delays later, and the game finally released on the 10th of December, after developers receiving death threats over the final delay and multiple major publishers speaking out against their treatment. Even the review period wasn't as smooth as it should have been. Reviewers only received code for the PC version of the game, with no video online to show how the console version ran. All this is just to say that there was clearly something wrong, something CD Projekt Red was trying to hide. When the game finally released in 2020, there was outrage. Reports of broken character models, ubiquitous game-breaking glitches, unbearable frame drops, and shocking performance rocked the PC port of Cyberpunk. When players got hold of the console editions, it was made instantly clear why CD Projekt Red hadn't offered console code to reviewers. See, the PC version of Cyberpunk was somewhat playable, depending on your hardware. People agreed that while the game was incredibly glitchy, there was actually a pretty great game hidden underneath all the glitches, albeit missing a lot of the originally promised features. The console edition, however, well, that's another story. The console edition of Cyberpunk 2077 was so broken that it was removed from the PS Store entirely. Xbox put up a warning on its store stating that Cyberpunk performed poorly on its system. The reality was far, far worse than poorly. Unplayable is probably closer to how it actually worked. Frame rates oscillating between 10 and 25 FPS, huge immersion breaking bugs and glitches, and a shockingly poor resolution on the base model consoles, Cyberpunk was an embarrassment for CD Projekt Red, whose reputation was almost irreparably damaged by the launch date of their landmark title. Almost more damaging was the butterfly effect the launch date of Cyberpunk had on AAA games. It put a spotlight on buggy releases and the increasingly long development time of modern games, but it also set a baseline of how glitchy a game could be on release. If a new game was released full of bugs, it could be deemed a success if it still wasn't as bad as Cyberpunk. It could be argued that Cyberpunk paved the way in profits, net earnings, and cold hard cash, that however broken a game was, it could still make money. We're beginning to see how we got to the current state of the AAA landscape, but there's one title that we need to discuss before we finally get to Redfall itself, and that's Ghost Recon Breakpoint. I think Ghost Recon Breakpoint is probably the most easily comparable game to Redfall in a number of ways, mainly in its gameplay. Remember that we talked about Redfall's out-of-place loot system and its boring, tired gameplay. Ghost Recon Breakpoint is the king of both of these issues, so let's take a look. So, the Ghost Recon franchise was built on stealth, with realism and true-to-life military tactics heavily built into its core gameplay. Ghost Recon Breakpoint is a game that not only doesn't follow that tried and tested path, but utterly ignores and throws to the wind every single learning made by the success of past Ghost Recon games. It's a cynical, twistedly modernised, anti-consumer cash grab that seems to only exist in order to sell microtransactions. This is epitomised by Ubisoft's implementation, and later removal, of Ubisoft Quartz, their NFT program, quite literally the most anti-consumer trend that was thankfully short-lived in games due to the ungodly backlash from the community. Every single system in Ghost Recon Breakpoint seems to exist only in order to chase trends, or to sell you emotes in their cash shop. The loot system is wildly out of place here, as why on earth would I bother to collect the most powerful guns with the best stats, when literally any common pistol can kill any enemy with one headshot? Why does this even exist in a military sim? Why am I being shown to be an elite fighter when I run out of stamina in the first 5 to 10 seconds of a sprint? And why is there a hub where I can see other operators? The entire point of this game is that I'm the Soul, and Soul is specifically referenced, survivor of a crash that led me to be the only soldier operating this island. So why can I see 30 soldiers in the main hub, all dancing around showing off their legendary weapons? It doesn't make any gameplay sense, and it certainly doesn't make any sense of the story. The only thing we can possibly imagine is that this system is in place in order to sell cosmetics. That's why Breakpoint is such a cynically shoddy product. And now, onto the worst offender of recent times, where we see the results of all of these trends and the first Xbox exclusive game released in 2023. It's time for Redfall. It's finally time to look at the absolute catastrophe that became Redfall. Developed by Arcane Studios and published by Bethesda, Redfall comes from one of, if not the, most reputable immersive sim developer of recent years. Deathloop, Prey and Dishonored all come from a similar level of polish and prestige, and have all won a number of awards. So how the hell did we get here? Developers sometimes want to try something different, I understand that, but this is different beyond recognition, and it attempts and fails to paint itself as a spiritual successor to some of Arcane's biggest hits. I think the answer to the question of how we got here can be found in the recent trends of the gaming industry, hence the few games I've gone through above. Trends in games often start with the successful renditions of those trends that establish them and set the course for them to be developed in the future. The problem is that the gaming industry is so often run by greedy, money-chasing executives that they bastardize these trends, turning them into cynical, poorly realised versions of these original concepts. Loot systems in games like Destiny became so implemented into RPG systems that they eventuated into Ghost Recon Breakpoint, a game so undone by its mechanics that it barely resembled the genre it was representing. Battle Pass systems in free-to-play games such as Fortnite were twisted and turned into microtransaction-infested, full-priced games such as the new Call of Duty games. Even the more negative trends, such as the unfinished and not quite fully realised but still mostly great cyberpunk, have established a lower bar for AAA games to cross and how complete they are upon release. Redfall, somehow and inexplicably, manages to simultaneously follow and make worse all the problems of modern game design. It is ludicrously unfinished, outrageously buggy, possesses the worst equivalent to a loot system we've seen in years, with the loot having a huge but ultimately meaningless presence, and sells for a full price of $70 US. The only redeeming qualities it has are that it's a day one Game Pass release, and it hasn't yet been turned into a hive of microtransactions. It's been responsible for not only further damaging Bethesda's already shaky reputation and shaking Arcane's good reputation, but it's causing Microsoft to lose control of their own narrative. Redfall came at a time when Microsoft could afford to make no mistakes, and yet it became their biggest mistake in years. Damage control has been underway in restoring what little can be redeemed from this situation, but Redfall has ultimately, through its damaging trend chasing and terrible implementation of Arcane's trademark immersive sim elements, created an enormous problem for both Bethesda and Microsoft. We can only hope that others finally learn from how it landed and implement changes to their own games, as this is a new and appalling low for a $70 full price game. The pressure on Starfield to succeed is enormous, somehow even bigger than it was before, and it feels like the success and the future of Xbox is laid squarely on its shoulders. We can only hope that it turns out a hell of a lot better than this. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe for more, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.